I guess what I would do is just say, seek out fact-based truth. When someone says something, evaluate it to see whether it's logical, and if it is logical, if it matches the things you've been trained to find knowledge with, then at a secondary level, check it out and see whether it's accurate. I don't know if I have any more deep words of wisdom than that.
Hi again, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Narrative Podcast with Mike Andrews, Aaron Bear, and David Mahan. And guys, it's time to get down to work. We can't debrief on the Winter Olympics and curling and all the fun stuff that we've been watching.
This happens every year. I get so super into curling. I don't care about curling. I don't even know where you would go
to say I'm a nerd without saying I'm a nerd.
It's not nerdy.
I love my country. I'm a patriot, right?
Because you watch curling?
Because I root for America no matter what we're doing, right? We could be throwing rocks on ice, and I'm like, crush the Canadians, right?
I think that's it. When you see America excelling at Canadian sports,
yes,
you just can't help
beating them twice in hockey. I never watched a single game of hockey. I watched more hockey.
You're curling without a bar and weights. You're doing it wrong.
Oh, come on. Get out of here. Seriously, don't knock it until you watch it, especially in the Olympics.
And in your case, David, you're just talking about hair product anyway.
I'm going to say.
The curls, you know
exactly.
what I mean?
They get really tight up there. You gotta get the small little curling ones, right?
Nice.
Yeah, that's
Well, let's talk about some actual news. And there's been some interesting momentum internationally to ban social media accounts for children under 16. We've seen some news out of the UK and Germany this week, and by no means are either of those conservative countries at this point, but the fact that they're realizing the detrimental effects of social media on childhood development, encouraging sign, and hopefully something that we'll see here in America sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I mean, you saw this out of Australia first. Honestly, this feels like it reminds me a little bit of what we saw on the pediatric gender side, where you saw Europe kind of move in a better direction than us first. In that case, I think it was they had run down that path so much faster than we had. I'd say in this case, I don't think the big tech companies have the same sort of power over their politics as they have here. But this is really the model for the direction we need to be going. There's no reason for anybody under 16 to need a social media account. And the data has just become unbelievably clear that this is poison, like almost to the level of nicotine or marijuana on a child's brain. The negative impacts, the doom scrolling, and all of these things can have. And so, again, I think this specific approach hasn't really been taken on in America yet, but it is something that I hope to see. I know I literally talked to the governor about this a few weeks ago as something that needs to happen here.
There's been a lot of states that have been kind of nipping around the edges on this. I mean, even here in Ohio, we've got a bill that's being floated to deal with, I don't know if you guys heard of that Haley Busby situation, an Indiana young lady who was groomed online through a video game app, social media app, was groomed. Guy from Ohio went and got her from Indiana, actually murdered her, dismembered her. And so there's a bill that Haley, there's a bill around her whole life and I mean, her whole situation. I don't know which is the best, move to kind of cut around the edges like we're doing here in some other states, or to move like Australia did in the UK. It is something that I think we just did a narrative on it, right, where we just talked about the harms of all the social media piece and the electronics in the schools, the classrooms. At some point, you just got to pull the plug and say this is harming kids, and we need to pull back.
Well, and that's the thing about it to me, David, is it's no longer a debate, right? It's the same thing as like you said, like cell phones in the classroom, like across the board. This stuff is poison, especially for young brains. I get it. It's one thing to say, hey, in our public school classrooms, right? These are government entities that we're regulating, so we have a lot more ability. I get from the conservative side, there might be a holdup to say, well, hold on, should we be, is this a parents' rights issue? Are we getting involved in individual liberty issues? My thing with this is the devastation from this, just like looking at underage smoking, right? We have long accepted that you can't sell cigarettes to an 18-year-old, right? Or somebody under 18, I should say, 17 or younger. In the same way, we have plenty of reason, just like you can't sell porn or give porn to a minor. In the same way, we can say, hey, we see the detrimental effect this has on our youth, and if we wait longer, the damage every day this is allowed to go, the damage gets worse and worse. So it's time to pull back radically from a lot of this tech stuff.
Yeah, and if you need a refresher on any of that or missed the interviews with Jared Cooney-Horvath or Claire Morrell, talked about this to a certain degree of the impact that all of this stuff has on childhood development. It's staggering. And at the very least, in your individual homes, you can put up some common sense guidelines and rules around how your kids use social media, or just opt them out entirely, because that's ultimately the best thing. I would say, I don't know that anybody over 16 needs social media either.
Right. All that to say, exactly. You can just opt out of that too, but yeah.
It's too much. It's too people-y out there
Exactly.
for us introverts. Even online, we don't want that.
I'm off X for Lent, which is, again, I gotta say,
Is that why it's been so quiet?
that's why it's been so quiet. Just because I am, and I honestly, again, I'm sure there's lots of Catholic listeners that we have right now that I'm going to drive crazy. Because I'm going to say, I didn't know what I was going to do for Lent, because they're like, well, you don't need to know what to do. We tell you, church tells you what to do for Lent. Me as a freewheeling evangelical, always try to do some type of fast over Lent, and I hadn't figured out what I was going to do this year. And I just felt how the distracting pull of this, right? Like every time I sit down on my computer, the first thing I'm doing is going there and just seeing what's going on and all that. And again, it can be fun, it can be good. But stepping away from that artificial world from time to time is
so
just
easy.
healthy.
I mean, it's too easy. We fasted indoor plumbing.
yeah, exactly.
That's a fast. That's a sacrifice.
Yeah, you guys really gave up on that.
You're really leaning into that Blomish thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Taking it a little too
Then
far.
I get to work, and then you got the sign on the door that says I can't use the bathroom here either. So it's
Exactly. You're trying to.
great.
Yeah.
Sewage issues at the Mahan house. So
Well,
next
we've
time
been
on
praying
the
for
narrative.
you, so
Yeah.
hopefully we can not deal with that, or you could not deal with that, so we don't have to deal with you having to deal with that. One other thing that we have not covered here on the program yet is it's about time for our Columbus Gala. It's coming up on April 11th, and over the past couple of weeks, we're able to announce that Scott Jennings, the CNN anchor, who's really the lone voice of conservatism crying in the wilderness
Right.
on that channel, is going to be our guest. But exciting to get to know more about him as we've promoted it a little bit and looked into what he stands for on CNN. I think it's going to be a great night and a great conversation that you're going to get to have with him.
Well, again, there's a lot of things with Scott that I just was so excited to have him come. First and foremost, one is someone still coming off of the City Club stuff here, as someone who literally his job is doing the City Club every day, right? Like he is going on CNN with a room full of people that think he's a bigot or think he's crazy or things like that, and you just see this guy calmly and coolly respond. He never gets flustered. He is a cheerful warrior. And then on top of that, I think the kicker for us of inviting Scott to come was honestly kind of remind me of Charlie Kirk a little bit, of seeing how open he is about his faith. Right, so it's not just Republican politics. It's not just owning the libs. It's a man who is doing this because he wants to see the kingdom of God advance. So super excited to have him. These nights are always great. It is a little bit of a change for us this year too. I think one of the big things we've changed to is we're not doing the Cincinnati Gala this year. So what we have been doing is 3 galas in a year, which is a lot.
Is it a lot?
Right? I mean, not for policy, because you guys don't do anything anyways. That's the Yeah, maybe for comms and for our
Comms and for the guy who's got to give a keynote.
exactly
and
the
all that.
advancement. Well, I mean, again, putting on these events is a major lift because we want to do everything excellently. And so what we decided is we're going to be moving to 2 galas a year. We're going to do Columbus every spring, and then we're going to rotate every fall, Cincinnati, Cleveland. And so we'll do Cleveland again this fall, and then next year we'll do Cincinnati. So really looking forward to that. Blessed to have Scott joining us, and it's always one of my favorite nights of the year.
Yeah, ccv.org/gala. You can get information on table sponsorships. Those are available right now, and in a couple of weeks we'll have individual tickets posted, assuming we don't sell out. I mean,
Right,
we're seeing
yeah.
some good momentum for tables, so that's probably
This
your
is
best
when it
bet.
all starts picking up, yeah.
Don't wait if you want to be in the room for that. Make sure you lock in your table now. We're going to take a quick break, and then we've got an interview coming up today with Wilfred Reilly, who's a repeat guest on The Narrative, and
One of my favorites, though.
fun conversation. However,
Listener warning.
yeah, if you're listening in the car with kids, you might just want to hit pause until you can put the earbuds in or that kind of thing. It's nothing that's too bad, but there are a couple places where you might not want little ears to hear some of the things that are discussed. But
Exactly. We don't have to go full bleep button on this, but it is a little, it's Will. Exactly.
so now you know what you're getting into. It's a fun interview coming up next. Hope you'll stick around for it on The Narrative.
If you've got something to say, we want to help you say it. Hi, I'm Vince Tornero. Since 2018, Wessler Media has been helping churches, organizations, and events amplify their message online. Thinking about starting a podcast, need help with social media or video? My team and I produce thousands of hours of audio and know how to create the content that will get the views, clicks, and shares that you are looking for. We just so happen to produce The Narrative too, by the way. So if you're interested or just want to ask questions, get in touch. WesslerMedia.com. That's WESSLER Media.com.
Pastors today are constantly pressured to stay out of politics, even as their congregations face confusing cultural issues that can only be navigated with solid biblical wisdom. Hi friends, Nick Spencer here, director of CCV's Tom Minery Fellowship for Cultural Engagement. The Tom Minery Fellowship helps pastors understand the times and shepherd their churches with foundational truths from Scripture. This program brings pastors together in regional cohorts where they gain biblical insight, practical guidance, and the confidence to speak wisely into today's unique challenges. Ohio pastors can join a community of leaders committed to courage, clarity, and connection. Learn more and apply today at mineryfellowship.org or click the link in the show notes for more information.
And we're back on The Narrative. We're joined now by Wilfred Reilly, who's an associate professor of political science at Kentucky State University and the author of books like Lies My Liberal Teacher Told Me, Taboo, 10 Facts You Can't Talk About, and Hate Crime Hoax. He has, alone or in combination with others, published more than 100 articles in national media and academic outlets, talks a lot about international relations, contemporary American race relations, and debunking theories like the existence of widespread white privilege and stuff like that. So, Will, it's a great privilege to have you back on the program here today. I know it's been a few years since we had you as a guest on The Narrative, and we're grateful.
You
for
weren't
the time.
even here, Mike.
I
The
wasn't
last time
even
we had
here.
him on, he predates you.
Yeah, imagine that. Imagine that. But grateful for the time today, Will. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you guys. Glad to be on the show.
Well, we wanted to reach out because shortly after the first of the year, we saw this article pop up from Fox News talking about the sneaky approach to curriculum changes in American universities and how they've backdoored some of this DEI stuff and the Marxist worldview into the curriculum. Thought it was a really interesting article, and would just love to hear some of your findings and what you have uncovered as you've looked into that issue of how they've attempted to do this.
Well, I've been paying a lot of attention to this. I, along with a couple other people, Brooks Crenshaw, Kevin Jackson, recently started one of the first big anti-woke consulting firms, Unified Solutions America. And people who are interested, to do a bit of a plug, can check us out at unifiedsolutionsAmerica.com. We actually, we're selling stock. You can see the button for that. If you oppose DEI, you want to get involved in that raise, you can click that on the front page. I'm a capitalist, so pretty interested in that. I think that's a good opportunity. But as we look at companies, as we look at potential clients, that's one of the things we're seeing, that right now, obviously, there's a lot of opposition to DEI, and we see that the picture is changing because the way that these ruthless corporate CEOs were kind of pitched on, you need to hire proportionately regardless of qualifications was, well, you'll get sued if you don't. Basically, you had the Human Rights Campaign, you had the Corporate Equality Index, you had ESG, SEL, like the whole alphabet soup thing. And people were very much trying to protect their bottom line and to kind of do the dance around that. Now with Trump, Vance, Harmeet, Dillon, the idea is, well, you'll get sued if you do this. So people are at least publicly backing away. The problem is you have this whole cuttlefish of, by now at least VP level executives inside your business that back this stuff. So it's very hard to get rid of. What we find is that people are, like, if you were reviewing the people at a college that used to be called vice president of diversity, DEI and whatever, that they'd be called something else like togetherness, belonging, student affairs, avoiding othering. Like there's specific language that's going to be used instead. So the question is, can you dig it out of kind of the mole hole? Have you guys heard the phrase like the left-wing ratchet only turns one way? And I mean, at some level, it sounds almost like that's the offbeat on a dance song that like so some girl would be moving to. But no, it refers to like the mechanical arts, that the whole goal of these people that are following the communist critical theories is you spin away from traditional society and you're going to be opposed, and then you stop. And then you go back in the rabbit hole and everything pauses for a bit. And then you get out and you move again, and you only move left. And that really is what we've seen in American pop culture, I think, and in American academic culture. So like we saw this before with political correctness in the 1990s. And that came out and people really, really got tired of it. I mean, you saw movies like PCU, and you saw, people were wearing shirts with spotted owls on barbecues. There was an enormous backlash to it. But the culture reacted. Rush Limbaugh became the number one voice on radio. Bush became the president. Republicans actually took over the Congress. But the people that were involved didn't actually go anywhere. I mean, if anything, academia became more liberal. The people that were entrenched in the tenure lines in the departments or in the HR departments, not new HR yet in corporations, just kind of shut up, stayed calm, and continued hiring people like them. And, a decade later, they got a chance to try to push their case again. And that's when you saw BLM and all this other stuff. Social events kind of lit the fuse, and the ratchet started turning again. And now you're seeing it stop. But by that point, they'd gotten to like trans rights. It's always the question of what the next movement is. So you're going to actually have to dig it out in reverse, I guess, is the point.
So Will, we can, there's a bunch of different areas to talk about there. Just real quickly to your sort of narrative you just spun on the federal government. I honestly, I think this was a part of what Trump, and especially Trump the second time around with JD, was, and Elon talking about the deep state, talking about really just the government bureaucrats Trump ran into and Trump won, that prevented him, that fought him on his agenda internally. Do you feel like there's been a lot made of, we're going to go through and root out these bureaucrats? This is a lot of what Russ Vought and those guys are talking about. Do you think they're at the federal government level? And I want to get to corporate America and academia especially, but at the federal level, from where you sit, do you think there's been a better job of pulling some of these Marxists or pulling some of these ideologues out of these positions in the federal government? Or do you think for the most part, most of them are just still in their line and wait?
I think there's been a better job, and I think that's why there's so much panic. I think that to some extent in modern upper middle class America, we define normalcy as kind of the center left-wing viewpoint. So when Trump says things that are really pretty obvious and commonsensical, like Mexico has a lot of problems, they're sending a lot of good people, but they're also sending, Mexico, there's a war between the cartels and the government right now. Like they're sending many good people.
We have friends that are stuck in Puerto Vallarta because there's a shelter in place order right now because the cartels are like waging war like it's the Middle East.
Downtown Puerto Vallarta.
Yeah, like it's crazy.
Yeah, the downtown of the city is on fire. I mean, and you're seeing these weird kind of almost Bambi-like videos coming out of the combat zone where people are in the hotels, they're filming it with like their bikini clad girlfriend standing next to them. And it's like, you guys got to get downstairs and barricade these doors, man. Yeah, I mean, if you're here on business, you got to get your company to fly you out. Like, this is real. You see like the cartel gunmen in the streets, like noticing that they're on tops of these hotels, which is really bad. But anyway, but yeah, I mean, when Trump says things like there are a lot of problems in Mexico, they're sending mostly good people, but they're also sending some criminals. Some of them are rapists. Like, this creates this roar of rage because it's not wrong, but it's counter the thing that everyone is supposed to say. So I guess where I'm going with that, yes, I think that Trump is more effective at communicating the desire to actually do real things on the right than almost anyone else I've seen in recent right-wing politics. Yes, he's been pretty good at getting out some of these bureaucrats, but like for a one-sentence backgrounder there, the deep state is a real thing. Like, when people refer to the deep state, what they're talking about is the level of government just below the 7,000 people each president replaces. So when each president comes into office, he brings in a surprisingly large team of people. Like, every cabinet member is replaced, every secretary, every assistant secretary, I think down to deputy undersecretary, he replaces, ambassadors replaced, he starts appointing judges. So it's a big move. But under those people, when you start getting down into the numbers, like it's a GS 1 through 18 or whatever, all of those people, and by the time you get into double-digit numbers, you're talking about the equivalent of senior executives, those people were appointed by previous presidents. And it's not just like they were appointed by, Mr. Biden and they have beef with Trump, but they know who he is. Some of them were appointed by, like, Gerald Ford. These are people that are from the opposition party that are 50, 60 years old. They're stuck in their ways. They've got a bottle of brandy in their desk. It's very hard to get them to do anything. So that's the deep state. And every president deals with this.
You just described David Mahan.
That's
Keep
what
going.
I was
Sorry,
saying.
You
Keep
just
me
said
to
that
it.
alley-oop, Will.
Sorry.
Like, anyway, keep
I'm
going.
50, bro. Like,
Yeah.
It's funny, but I mean, it is a reality though. Like, everyone that goes into DC has this problem, and it's harder for Republican presidents because they're 60% Democratic. So I think Trump's been pretty good with it. But what Trump and Elon actually seem to have figured out is that the way to get rid of them is just to cut whole sectors that are useless. So when Elon Musk went into Twitter, and I actually know Elon Musk casually, like, we're not close friends or anything, but he follows me on Twitter. I've messaged him a couple times, communicated with him. When Elon Musk goes in, mostly one-sided, he's pretty busy. But when Elon Musk went into Twitter, he fired something like 90% of Twitter's staff, leading to these graphics that you see in the business press, where it's like number of employees, Meta, 9,000, Google, 850 plus overseas Indian workforce, Twitter, 30. I mean, he literally let go of marketing, HR, everything but IT and sales, which is pretty much, you could argue that's pretty much what you need for a company, along with the CEO. Mm-hmm. And Twitter didn't really get worse. I mean, you could argue it got better as he started paying people and people started doing some of their own page design and so on. Anyway, Trump's doing kind of the same thing. There's an article recently that I have a group chat that's made up mostly of men, and they were pretty ruthless with this. But Trump cut a huge percentage of female and especially black female jobs in DC. And you can Google this, like, black female workforce cut by Trump. That's not a racist thing. It means that Trump focused in on those areas of government work where you had a lot of people that were in these paper-pushing jobs. And as it turned out, that part of the deep state was very disproportionately female, and it was even more disproportionately black female. But it was sort of the equivalent of marketing. And I think what he and Vance are doing is just saying, we're gonna get rid of all that. We're gonna get rid of the people that are in charge of monument acquisition. I just made that up. But like whole sectors, like, I'm just not gonna fight with them anymore. They're just gone. So that's one way to do it.
I'm always interested when you get on, and I live in this space where people will gravitate to my ideas, right? Conservative, Christian ideas, whatever. But if they are, family, African Americans, 90-some% vote Democrat, they have a very difficult time they might agree with the concepts, but they have a very difficult time with the party. They have a very difficult time with the rhetoric. You are a professor at historically Black university. How do you navigate? How do you navigate that space? And I'm sure family, aunties and uncles and
Well,
them.
it's interesting because I think that, first of all, I mean, I myself am a pretty likable guy. I'm from Chicago. I'm pretty social. Like at the upper end as an academic, I mean, like I play golf, like, I mean, so I don't think that I'm not racist, which I think would be a problem. So I don't really encounter too many issues in day-to-day life. I do find that students tend to have, I mean, bluntly, a weird perspective on Republicans, conservatism, to some extent, white people, to some extent, people from outside the cities. And I'm not really all that patient with it, like as long as we get along well personally, because I don't think it's based in reality. So I've heard comments like Trump and, for that matter, Bill Clinton are devil worshipping pedophiles. And it's just like, come on, kid, that's not true. Like I think, so there are two levels. One is I really do feel that on the Groyper side of the right, there's some crazy stuff going on. And if like a young African-American man says that, I'll actually acknowledge that and say, yeah, that's true. Do you think that's going to be worse for you as a Black businessman than communism on the other side or mass illegal immigration? Then you can have a real conversation. But I think a lot of the other stuff that's been tolerated in the community is honestly just crazy. And I'll sort of say that. And I think people respect that. I like the whole Trump with the Epstein files thing that came out recently. First of all, I don't understand the Trump is hitting up a conspiracy angle. The Epstein lawsuits have been over for a while. I think 3 presidents have had a chance to release the Epstein files. Trump did. So the idea that he's blocking their release is a bit odd. But when you actually look through the crazy salacious stuff, most of that came in via tip line. I trained as a lawyer before going to grad school, and those are set up in every major case and just nutcases call them. So these are mostly men that dated the sex workers, like the broken by now 25-year-old girls that were involved in the Epstein case, and sort of drunkenly after a night with them said things like, yeah, this girl told me she ate a kid with Bill Clinton. And this is written down as though it were serious information. And then like federal agents comment on it like, excuse the language, but like, this is an alcoholic hooker. We probably should not follow up on this tip. And that's it. None of these things became legal cases, so on. So there's a mix between like listening to serious concerns and understanding those, and then just saying a lot of what you guys believe is nonsense. Last point. Remember a couple of years ago, a study came out that found that Black and urban white, by the way, men, working class men, thought that 10,000 people a year, unarmed Black men, were shot by the cops. So like a lot of this stuff is just nonsense. And it's important to say that. It's like can men be women? If a feminist girl or a Black kid or a hip hop white kid comes up to you and says, sex is not real, or every year
is on a spectrum or what?
Yeah, that was the Nature magazine. Sex is on a spectrum. And it's just sort of, no, it's not. I mean, there are a lot of adult males that have dated 20 people. Like there is no spectrum. You're not going to meet people that have 2 vaginas or 1 and a penis. It's just not going to happen.
Recently I spoke at the Cleveland City Club, and NPR did this whole bit afterwards with like this analysis where they talked about my hate speech. And the example they used of me saying hate speech was dudes can't get pregnant, and that there were 2 sexes.
Pretty wild.
And it was like, well, they can't though, right? Like men by definition cannot get pregnant. And again, that's I appreciate what you're saying there. And like, you just can't you can't give an inch on this stuff because it's just not true. It's just not it's not like, there's serious things to debate, hard questions to ask, but can a man get pregnant is not a hard question.
And another thing with libs in general, with the diehard people on the left, is that you guys all know what constructivism is, right? It's like an even nerdier, smarter guy version of postmodernism, but it's the idea that like language defines reality. So like all sex with heterosexual men is rape type thing. But all of these arguments with smart leftists break down to weird word games. So like the Israeli-Arab war in Gaza is a genocide. Well, what do you mean by a genocide? Well, a war where a lot of people die and someone might want to wipe the other group out. Well, it's not what it means. Well, it's what it means to me. And it's the same thing with like men can get pregnant. What you mean by men is women who identify as men. Well, okay, then men can get pregnant. Aha, you agree with me. So it's just none of it means anything. All you have to do is say, well, I'm using the traditional definition of men, which is still, after a fight, the Webster's Dictionary definition of men. And this is why they try so hard, by the way, to say like all of the major medical organizations now use our definition, or the dictionary has bent and used our definition, because it gives them this sense of authority. Like if you're basing your claim totally on words and not logic or anything like that, you have to say, well, everyone agrees with our words. No one's allowed to dissent. Because the moment someone stands up, like Matt Walsh did famously with his movie, and says, well, no, your words are just nonsense. Like, we took this poll of people, no one agrees with you, then your argument is over. But anyway, that's, yeah, if people just say nonsense, just point out that it's nonsense. That's The Emperor Has No Clothes is one of the most famous stories in 5 or 6 different cultures for that reason.
Yeah,
David, you say nonsense. Wanted to get that out.
I love that word authority, right? Because I think for a lot of young people I work with and I talk to on these issues, it's like, well, yeah, but the Republicans don't care about people. It's like there's this form of godliness, right, on the left. It's like this form of righteousness. It just feels like they care more, and it feels like the other side doesn't. And just like when you talk about the corporate side of this, nobody cares about trans, black, white, minority, otherwise. It's just they're trying to have authority in this area to where they say we're one of the good guys. And I love, when I read your stuff and I hear you and interview you tend to be able to cut through that to where this is ridiculous. But even that sometimes can feel like, well, you don't care about people. You just, you're just trying to be funny. And I would love to follow you for like a week on campus as you engage your students who have also read your stuff,
If you as another kind of professional black man, or for that matter, like you can't be racist as a black boss either. So, I mean, the campus is 40% white. If any of you guys wanted to come show up at campus, I'd buy you lunch. You'd hang out, meet the kids, play ball at the gym.
Even Mike.
So we're taking it on the road, guys.
There's so much I want to cover here with you. Real quick, I want to go back to one point you brought up about groypers on the right. And this is something that Vivek Ramaswamy is running for governor here. We've been talking about this. He gave a big speech at TPUSA AmFest on this. I get on X and I see, and I get it, right? Like I'm a Christian man of Jewish heritage. I endorse Vivek for governor, and I get all of this like crazy, this Ashkenazi whatever endorsing this, not like it. I see it come out of the woodwork. I can't tell how real the Nick Fuentes stuff is. It feels to me like a Chinese psyop. Like people are like Russia and China are juicing the Nick Fuentes stats to make him look like a real thing. Obviously, something weird's going on with Tucker. That's a whole other can of worms we can look at some other time. But how much do you, when you say like, when we're looking at this problem, how much of this is a real problem on the right? And how much of this is, this idea of like, hardcore ethno-nationalism is just people who are on X too much?
I think it's a mix. So first of all, I mean, it is pretty funny that a lot of the leading, not necessarily white supremacists, but like edgy boy types like Myron Gaines, Andrew Tate, Nick Fuentes, Sneeko, like visibly aren't white. And like even other people, like, I have no problem with these guys as, thinkers, whatever. I mean, some questions about personal life in the later case, but like Orrin McIntyre, James Fishback, like they don't really seem to be white either. And if you ask them, like as a non-white guy, there's some questions, like there's a little dodgery going on. So I mean, like a lot of these people, I don't know how real the white supremacy is. I'd say maybe half the people following them are bots. Not that everyone there would claim to be a white supremacist, but no, there's definitely a real trend there. And I think it goes beyond like the performative Groyper stuff. Like the anti-Indian thing is actually pretty real. Like when Vivek on Christmas about a year ago said what he said about American culture. Like American schools are pretty good. Whites and Asians in America outperform most whites and Asians globally. And this would also be true for blacks and Hispanics, by the way. If you compare Hispanics to a civilized Hispanic country like Argentina or blacks to a stable black country like Nigeria, I mean, IQs in the USA are actually pretty good. I mean, whites are still at 100, blacks are up to, I think, 91, Hispanics like 95. So, I mean, like all this is like brothers fighting. Like the country is not going anywhere, the leading country in the world. Asians smoke everybody. Asian tested IQ would have to be like 108 if you translate from an SAT of 1250. But anyway, this is all technical academic talk. The point is, however well we may be performing, Vivek said American schools are pretty good, but there are a lot of problems in American culture. People spend a lot of time playing on their phones, trying to get laid, playing football. These are all classic conservative critiques, by the way. We need to improve that culture, and got absolutely smashed. People were freaking out and saying things like, "You stinky Jeet, how dare you criticize us?" And this led to this year-long chimp out about H-1Bs. I mean, these 1,000 comment threads with identified people that are like local state representatives commenting. And I think that's all very real. There's an enormous amount of irritation at legal immigration, illegal immigration. And a lot of this does go back to this idea of we, which mostly means white Americans, heritage Americans, are losing the country. I think that's 50+% of that is pretty real. I don't think Nick Fuentes is going to be the symbol of it nationally for long. But last point. But I mean, the other day I said something totally innocuous. I mean, I said that the best way to look at like IQ and test scores is to compare people in the same country. So another thing you see online constantly is people saying like the test in IQ of Somalia is 65 or something like that. And that's because you don't have schools in Somalia. Like Somalia is a country that was run by pirates until like 10 years ago. The whole country was at war. So it doesn't make any sense to look at an IQ test that the UN gave to people in a refugee camp and say, hey, look, they're pretty stupid. If you look at the IQs of Somalis who are non-selected refugees, by the way, we didn't get the best of the best, no offense to anyone. In Minneapolis, the average IQ is like 90. It's not blowing anyone out of the water, but it's the same as the American black population. It's sort of what you'd expect. It's just normal. And that could be improved. I don't think Somalis in Minneapolis are going hard in the schoolroom right now. So in the Leering Center. So I mentioned this, the best way to compare people's in the same country. And all these people started saying like, no, it's not. It sounds like you're justifying letting in more of these damn immigrants. This is my home. That attitude, justified or not, is really prevalent. Fishback, the guy I mentioned.
Hang on, I want to push on that. Like, honestly, man, like I get called a Christian nationalist, and this is why, like, I take what I see from James Lindsay seriously, and obviously I take Vivek very seriously on this. But we would be called the Christian nationalist group here. I don't know anybody who follows Nick Fuentes. Like everyone, and so I do agree. Like I see the fact that this guy is a thing, and all these other guys you've named off, and even again, I think the fact you even see people like Tucker messing around with these people, like, is concerning to me. The size and scope of it on the right, I'm not convinced yet that it's worth acknowledging and calling out. But I still don't have a good feel for are we in the Christ, right? Is the woke right, as Lindsay would call it, anywhere near a threat as the woke left. I'd say absolutely
Oh,
not.
I'd probably agree with that. I mean, the difference is that the woke left has had decades. So the woke right is something we need to monitor as people and especially as men on the right. The woke left has had decades to entrench in institutions and almost won. Yeah, that's the difference. I mean, like there aren't woke right professors goose stepping around at Harvard. I mean, like there are people with communist red flags. I mean, when I went to University of Illinois Law School, which is one of the best outside the Ivies, I mean, Francis X. Boyle was one of my professors. He was a good, funny guy. But this is a guy who's almost a communist. I mean, this is the guy who wore a kangaroo costume to the UN. I mean, to criticize, American and Western policy. So, yeah, it was pretty funny. I mean, he literally said, like, a lot of people, you can have a funny op. Like, you can have someone who disagrees with you who is stylish and funny. But so, I mean, he was literally sitting there in a kangaroo costume making fun of England, which I appreciate. But, those guys had decades.
That's pretty American to me. I don't know.
He's an American. He's just an American Marxist or whatever. But the point, though, is like those guys had decades to do that. I mean, Ron Radash wrote that whole book, Commies, about the pipeline from the hippie revolution into the universities, even into business. Bill Ayers is another one that my family's met personally. I mean, he was a communist terrorist, but he was also a University of Illinois, Chicago tenured professor. So he'd be at like dinner parties in Chicago talking about blowing things up. So, yeah, the woke right is not yet at that level. I do think it might be coming, though. Like when I mentioned Fishback, Florida's a state with like a good GOP bench. I mean, you've got Ron DeSantis, Casey DeSantis, Byron Donalds. Like a lot of these people have personal life issues once you get below DeSantis, but just 10, 12 solid candidates. There was a poll taken among white males under 30 asking who they'd vote for in a gubernatorial election. I think Fishback got 32% of the vote. No one else got more than 8%. So, like, this is coming. This idea of I'm tired of these sort of simp candidates. I'm proud to be white. Mm-hmm. Individually, there's nothing wrong with any point. But if you do get, any of the regulars on the Nick show going up against, like, Zohran Mamdani, that's another step down for politics. Like, we used to have Bush and Clinton. I mean, I don't like Clinton's personal life, but pretty mainstream candidates that could talk on the mic. And then you get Bernie Sanders and Trump, and Trump again, big funny guy, but that's a little more to the fringe. And if you get Mamdani and Fuentes, like you're moving further and further toward that primary base, and that's not good for the country.
Let's go. We're gonna finally actually get to the book that you wrote, which was the reason we invited you on, which is right behind you there. The Lies by Liberal Professor Ever Told You.
30 minutes
but
ago.
You kind of led right up to it here. Like, what are, like, when just high level, what are the primary lies you're seeing? Like the worst lies that are penetrating culture deeply that are starting in the universities? Because I know for us at CCV, for a lot of folks involved in public policy, we see a lot of the ideology that's shaping how people vote today get planted in higher ed, in taxpayer-funded higher ed, even in red states. But what are those root lies that you see are most dangerous being told in universities today?
Well, the book looks at a whole bunch of things. I mean, one of them is really all across the board. Like white flight in the 1960s was just due to mindless racism. The Red Scare was fake. There were no communists. Native Americans were peaceful. They spent all day in dancing and making love. Slavery was unique to America. Like, and the third chapter title is pretty funny. I was kind of surprised the publisher let me get away with it. But like, there's a background to this, right? So in the United States, there's a certain narrative that comes with history if you go to a good college or prep school. And it's like, point one is, we Westerners have the worst civilization in history. And point two is, and they're lying to you about that. So like point one would be like, Trail of Tears, blah, blah, blah. We drop big bombs on the innocent Japanese who would never kill anyone. And point two is, that's definitely not what you're told in school where you're told we were great. So point two would be, it's been reiterated over and over in books like Lies My Teacher Told Me, Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, What a People's History of the United States, a Zen Reader. 1619, A Black History of the United States. There must be 20, all on the bestseller list, alongside my book, Lies My Liberal Teacher Told Me. But also check out my consulting firm, Unified Solutions America. But anywho, like, my opinion when I looked at this perspective, and I've seen it, I mean, like, I went to St. Mary's in Chicago. I went to high school in the hood because I wanted to play sports and graduate quickly. But, like, other than that, I've gone to fairly good schools, and I've heard this narrative my entire life. And it always rung resoundingly false. And when I had some time, and I looked at the high school textbooks used in the country, some of the college textbooks, and I looked at primary sources, and I was like, I mean, my conclusion was, yeah, a lot of this is completely untrue. So, like, chapter 1, I actually look at the history of slavery. Tom Sowell did this once 30 years in the past. I mean, I take that as kind of a homage. I go at least equally as in-depth. And I mean, my conclusion is, you know, unsurprisingly, if you're a scholar of the field, probably very surprisingly otherwise, slavery didn't begin at all in the modern West. Slavery is one of the most abiding human institutions. It's the step of human development beyond just killing and eating your defeated foes. You know, slave is one of the first 10 or 12 written human words. So when you look at, cuneiform, the old Babylonian and Akkadian writing in clay, the word for slave literally means defeated warrior. I mean, there's a term, a glyph that's used for man from the mountains, and the addition that makes it slave looks a lot like shackles. So it's just that figure with that addition. And from there you go through Roman slavery, Greek slavery, Roman slavery, Arabic slavery, Aztec slavery. The Arab slave trade, by the way, was the longest of the world's slave trades, and it gave the world the term both for black slave, abid, and white slave, slav, or slave. So, I mean, the Arabs or the Muslims were the great slavers. I mean, people who were Arabs or close, Berbers, Barbary pirates, would raid north into poor regions of Europe. I mean, today's Bosnia, Yugoslavia, Macedonia, all that, Moldava. And they would take blonde women, were preferred boys, and they would bring those down. And they would raid into black East and West Africa. They would take black people, they would bring those up. And they'd have these giant integrated slave markets, usually along the coast. I mean, Zanzibar Island was used mostly as an entrepot for selling slaves. So, yeah, I mean, slavery was just something that existed throughout almost all the time. The unique contribution of the West actually was ending the slave trade. I mean, this has been almost forgotten, be a great subject for a movie, but Britain had an entire naval unit that was designed to sail around much of the Pacific and sink slave ships, free slaves. I mean, over the years, they freed hundreds of thousands of slaves. I forget the exact total. It might be 800,000. But that's a narrative that's almost never explored today. You're essentially not supposed to talk about it. So that's the first chapter. Second chapter is the Red Scare. I mean, there obviously were an enormous number of communist spies in the USA during the 1960s. People that are curious about that, as opposed to checking my memory 9 months or more after I wrote the book, should probably check out the Venona cables, Venona. When we were on pretty good terms with Putin after the Soviet Union fell, Yeltsin and so on, the Russians actually declassified a lot of their information relating to Soviet-era agents in the USA. We did some similar favors for them. So we know who they had over here, and it turns out that most of those cause celebs for the left, Julius and Ethel Rosenberg and so on down the line, we thought they were Ruski spies, and we wanted to kill them because they were Ruski spies. Like, there was massive evidence that they were. Like, Whittaker Chambers and all those boys were completely vindicated.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Witness went through all of that stuff, right? That was all like the core.
Yeah. So you had again something that I think is the pattern that you saw later with grooming gangs, so on. You had these just ordinary looking people. I mean, like those British girls at first were just savage for being sluts and chubby, green-haired drunks. Like you had these people that were coming up against these institutional systems that were trying to protect people that were seen as much more suitable. I mean, leaders in the Pakistani Muslim community, local police officers, so on. In this case, I mean, far above that of Yale men, this sort of thing, versus these grubby reporter types. And the reality was that the story that was being told was almost 100% accurate by the just sort of unprepossessing working class citizens. So yeah, I talk about that. So Red Scare, White Flight. And one of the chapters that's thrown in almost in passing, but is the transition of the idea that the South rapidly transitioned from conservative to liberal based on essentially, or liberal to conservative based on essentially racism is also false. That's not a thing that happened. You're looking at massive population shift over time. So it's a book that looks at a bunch of different topics and tries to synthesize a coherent narrative out of them.
I'm curious as I try to combine, what you're saying about the book and what we just talked about with the woke right and your warning for us as conservative men to speak into that. So like as we unpack these lies that are almost foundational to our culture now, what would be some of your cautions that you could issue to our listeners as like, we want to be people of truth. We want to stand on things that we can prove factually, but yet not drifting to the extreme on the right side.
Yeah. I mean, so my message and by the way, it's, liberal. So I want to just make sure the liberal to conservative would be the path for the South. I'm pretty tired as I work on the company. I just want to make sure I got them all in the right direction there. But so my advice would be follow evidence-based reality, I think. So I'm obviously of the right as well, and I'm probably much more tempted to believe the things on the right that sound true, that are like kind of our bête noirs, than I am to believe any of the equivalents on the left, like racism is still everywhere would be one of the left wing kind of constant slogans. ICE is murdering people. I mean, I by default think that stuff is nonsense. I wrote a book called Hate Crime Hoax, but a lot of the stuff on the right isn't really true either. I mean, like an example would be the idea that society's gotten way more dangerous. So as we've gotten more racially integrated, I mean, I think a lot of that is just Caucasian Hispanics moving into the country. And I don't necessarily know if we're going to think of ourselves as vastly more racially diverse in 30 years, honestly. But as we've gotten more racially diverse, as we've gotten more tied into our damn phones, which we need to put down, as we live more in cities, I think there's this perception that the USA is a much riskier country. Porn's all over the damn place. Everyone's got 2 or 3 guns. A lot of people feel that danger is constant. The reality is that murders are down by almost half since I was a kid. I mean, in the 1990s were that time of kind of New Jack City in the black community, that one movie Kids in the white community. There were 25,000 homicide deaths per year. Now it's, now that we're recovering from the BLM spike, I mean, it's maybe 16, 17,000. So that a lot of the things that people think on any political team don't exactly match reality. I guess what I would do is just say, seek out fact-based truth. When someone says something, evaluate it to see whether it's logical, and if it is logical, if it matches the things you've been trained to find knowledge with, then at a secondary level, check it out and see whether it's accurate. I don't know if I have any more deep words of wisdom than that.
Before we let you go, can you give us just a quick plug? I know you've mentioned the website a couple of times, but for people who are not only interested in the consulting work that you're doing, but just want to follow some of your commentary and stuff like that, where's the best way to stay up to date with your work?
He's got a consulting group.
Never heard of
You
that.
hadn't heard that?
Yeah, I'm very, very subtle. I'm not at all capitalistic when it comes to this kind of stuff. Yeah, the consulting company itself is Unified Solutions America. That's just one phrase. It's Unified Solutions America, USA. But it's
I was going to say, I see what you did there. That's
yeah, we actually specifically wanted to trademark something we could easily sloganize as USA, because the whole idea is, we support one combined people, but DEI and the way it's been practiced is nonsensical. It's a bad idea. But for me personally, the easiest way to find me is just to search my name. It's Wilfred, WILFRED, REILLY. Look a brother up. But if you just check me out, Wilfred Reilly, you'll find my Twitter. That's actually at the top of the screen. If you search me, I'm apparently like a top 10,000 or whatever Twitter users. So my little like each tweet is on the Google results screen. But you'll find my Twitter, my Facebook. I'm old and I went to college. My website. I have a little a put together website. I actually did that in coordination with Free Black Thought. So there's an AI that pulls up each new article that I do. A couple other things like that. And like I always say, I'm at that kind of H-list level of celebrity where I will chop it up with you, talk to you if you message me on any of those portals. So I look forward to talking to you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Narrative, presented by CCV and produced by Wessler Media. If you found today's episode insightful, leave us a review or rating and subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts. We're your hosts, Mike Andrews, Aaron Baer, and David Mahan, and we'll see you next time on The Narrative.